Morning, Jack. I miss our DevCon road trips.
Good morning,
Uh,
Arnold. I do too.
and John, I don't know how many geocaches he's found, but did you find one in South Africa? Anyway, we're here this morning, February 14th, 2012, and Jack
December
is loving
14th.
his discovery.
December 14th.
December 14th, 2012, Friday morning. Too early for me. Okay. So without further ado, Jack will share his findings and kind of give us a glimpse of how he used Navicat.
Okay, yeah. When we were at the WXDevCon, one of the products they talked about was the Navicat, so I played with it a while, and I've used other free programs in the past, and I finally decided to purchase this one after playing with the trial. And so if anybody wants to go along with these steps to use a database or even to use a GGIE database, you can download that 30-day trial from the link that's in the header there and play with it. It's fully functional. So I did use the GGIE database. Of course, that was part of the WXDevCon, so we cannot really give much of that out to the non-DevCon people, but we can still use it, I think, as a template to play around with stuff. So a little background on that was that we had a MSSQL version of that database, and Pete had created a Postgres Sequel empty script for it, but the actual test data that we used in the class was not in that. So that's why I thought I would play around with it and see how difficult it was to transfer the data. So with that background, I'm going to go through some of these steps, and hopefully you could follow along if you ever did download the Navicat. The other stuff I use is free. The Postgres Sequel comes with its own PG Admin 3 tool, which you can use. It's pretty well. Most of these free or non-free SQL type databases have their own tools. SQL Management Studio, of course, comes with SQL Server. The PG Admin 3 with PostgreSQL. MySQL has its own little admin tool, and on the MySQL side I actually use the MariaDB, which comes with a Heidi SQL, though I use something called SQL OG, made by the WebYog people.
So what you're
And they,
saying is you can use one tool now to do all of them?
yeah,
Or just
Navicat does a pretty good job of trying to be all things to all those databases. So if you want to standardize on one interface that you're comfortable with, then something like Navicat, the Navicat Premium, because that's the one that encompasses the 5 different databases, I believe. We'll bring it up here in a second. So let's just look at these steps here. So the first thing you've got to do, obviously, is have a. We're going to transfer from MSSQL to PostgreSQL. So obviously, the first thing you need to do is have both those databases functional. And in the case of the GGIE database, Andy had supplied a backup for it, so I just restored that into a MSSQL server and made sure that was working. So let's bring up Navicat here so you can see it. Okay, everybody should be able to see that. I've got 3 connections set up, and I called them all the GGIE. One's going to the MySQL database, which is really this MariaDB. If you want to familiarize yourself with that a little bit, Alan Sawyer did a really good webinar 31A on that back in August, which I listened to. And that's actually the first time I'd ever even heard of MariaDB. But that's a replacement. It's supposed to be binary compatible with MySQL, and it's being driven by the fellow who actually created MySQL. And it was just in the news a couple weeks ago that they'd gotten some more investment money, so it's looking to be pretty serious, kind of like the Postgres Sequel is on the foundation side of things. But Okay, so we've got that, and we've got the PostgreSQL. I'm running the 9.2.1 version here, and we also have MSSQL, and I'm running the 2008 R2 version of that. So if open up this little MSSQL, you can see I've got just a standard DBO with all these tables that have actual data in them. Open up one, you can see, well, that one's not a good example. There's probably something in that. Yeah, you can see names and stuff. So we've got data there. So what I've found with all these tools, not just Navicat, I don't think there's any one tool that can do a complete database transfer from one type of database to another. I mean, you can get tables, you can get the structure of them pretty well. Sometimes you can get views. Functions don't usually translate because it's just like trying to translate from C to Clarion. But it can do a lot of the work for you, and if you kind of tweak it a little bit, you can get the stuff over and save a lot of time using a tool rather than trying to export everything and comma delimited files and bring them in and all that, which can be a lot of work when you have a lot of tables with a lot of data, because I've certainly done it that way in the past before. Okay, so the first thing what you want to do to get this stuff over is you need to have a database to receive it. The Navicat doesn't create the database for you. You have to already have a database as the target. So if we look on the PSQL, which is the PostgreSQL, right now I've got a empty database. Well, actually he's not. That was the final result. Let me delete him so we can have something completely. And another thing I might mention when you play with this stuff, say I've got PostgreSQL open here, and the two guys aren't very happy when you've got them both running. So let me delete that guy from here. Okay, he's gone. Now let me get out of that, and we'll go back to Navicat. So we don't have anything on that side. The Postgres database is a standard database that comes when you install PostgreSQL. It's just its little internal database. Like MySQL has its own little MySQL database that comes with it, so that's why that's there. So in Navicat, let's create an empty database. So I'm going to do a new database, and I'm just going to call it GGIE, and I'm just taking all the defaults. Takes it a second or so. And now we've got an empty database. Open it up. And one thing when you're going between these types of databases, PostgreSQL puts everything in public. MSSQL by default puts everything in DBO, which is the schema. But it's smart enough to transfer that stuff. So when I first got the tool, my first idea was, well, let's just see what it can do, and we'll just transfer everything from one to the other, because it says it can do that. So let's just do that, and then we'll be done. Everything will be lovely. So it will do that, but you run into some issues depending on what database you're going to. Pete, on his blog at the nextstage.com, he's got some good articles on PostgreSQL, and he talks about the case sensitivity, and that's where it really kind of bites you here. If you just transfer, it'll come over, but if you've used, say, camel case on your MSSQL side, on the PostgreSQL side, it'll show up there as well. And the case sensitivity of PostgreSQL is such that you can have issues with other client applications like WINDEV, Clarion, those kind of guys. The safest thing is to keep everything in lowercase on the PostgreSQL side, which is what I've done in the past and what Pete recommends as well. So that way when you're doing a select statement, you don't have to worry about it. But if you create the script, and we'll do this here in a second, you'll see what I'm talking about. So and I will do a straight transfer when we go to MySQL if we have time to test that real quick. But so let's transfer from MSSQL to Postgres. So we've got an empty database. There's nothing in it at this point. Now, if you transfer the stuff, you can get the data, okay, but since Pete had supplied us with a complete empty database script which had all the functions and the triggers and all that stuff, I wanted to preserve that as much as possible. So big picture, the trick is to, rather than trying to take his empty script and translate it into an existing migrated database from MSSQL to Postgres, you're better off to go the other direction. So get your data over from MSSQL into PostgreSQL best way you can, and then fix up just the tables themselves to have the same schema definition that you've got on the PostgreSQL side. And at that point, transfer your data, because at this point you've got both databases inside the same physical database, PostgreSQL in this case. And then when you're doing the data transfer, it's a lot cleaner. And with a little tweaking on the scripts to make them match up, I was able to do that. So let's see how that works. So the first thing you want to do, we've got an empty database here, but we need to have the actual structure. And so let me see if I can find in my notes how I did that. So we've created an empty database. Oh, okay, we've got the script that Pete gave us was just called PostgreSQL.SQL. So we can create that. The easiest thing is with a batch file, actually. And I've got one here that just loads it, which is maybe cheating a little bit. But
yeah,
let me
you're
get out.
cheating. This.
Well, we're not supposed to, since that's a private thing, I'm trying not to show too much. So let's just say in general, you could have any kind of database structure you're trying to, so let's say you've already created your target
Well, can you
database.
give us a sampling of what it looks like?
Oh yeah, I can show you the script a little bit.
Okay.
But okay, it's done. So that's
thanks, Pete.
yeah, thanks, Pete. Let me show you the actual. So we created the database in Navicat, but you could have created it at a command line. And so here's the to create the actual database. You run this psql command, which you would have access to once you've installed PostgreSQL on your computer. And then it's just logging in and then running this SQL.
Kind of like you just created in Navicat. You went right-click.
This is what Navicat really did, something to that effect. It would have, well, I would have had to drop the database manually, but then it ran that SQL, something like that, to create that database, which is pretty much all the defaults. Now, the load command that I just ran is very similar. It's just running a different script. And the create database, it's a chicken and egg thing because you cannot access the database until it's created. So you'll notice here, when I'm loading the database, I've got this -d parameter hitting the GGIE database.
Got it.
Whereas on the script, when I ran that, I don't have that command in there because there's nothing to connect to yet. So when I loaded this, he's actually running this. Well, that's, I might have cheated a little bit too much there. I think that's the final one. That's the one I created that has everything in it. So let me see if that's true or not. Let's go up to the pgadmin 3, which is free once again. We can see, yeah, see we've got the views and the tables and the sequences and the functions. That's a complete database. So that's a little too much.
You just wanted the structure, right?
Yeah. So what I could drop all that stuff, or let's do this. I think I've got a Sometimes it's a little hard to drop the database if you're in it. Let me try that now. Okay, I've got one other script we can run.
For a non-SQL guy like me, you just keep deleting SQL databases. It's like,
Yeah, well, worst case scenario, this virtual machine has a snapshot to where I can restore everything to the final thing if we really screw something up. So, yeah, that's why I have a lot of backups. But these are all the SQL commands I had. Now, one of these is empty. And see, what's this one? This one right here. That's the one we want to run. So let me make a copy of, let's see, this one here. Well, the create one, it doesn't use the empty one, does it? Make sure I'm doing the right thing. No, that just created the empty thing. So I'll tell you what let's do. Let's run the create one. It should just be empty. Nothing to drop. Okay, so now if we do a refresh here, we should have that database. But it's empty. There's no schema in it at all. So if I bring up in pgadmin3, I can bring up Pete's little script here. And see, he's got the create database in there, which we've already run. I'm going to take that out, and then I'm just going to run this whole thing right here. And that creates all the empty stuff. So that came when we got the GGIE source code from the class. That was included in all that. So now we've got sequences and tables and functions and views just like we had before, but if I look at, say, contacts, it should be empty. Yeah. So what we've got now is a target database that has all the schema that we ultimately want, but no data in it. So now we can finally use Navicat to move some data. So you could transfer it right now, but we'd have the case sensitivity issues. So what I ended up doing was Navicat will let you export to an actual SQL file, which you can then tweak a little bit and then play that in and create it. So let's see kind of how that works. Right now we've got the GGIE database we created, and we've got the existing MySQL database. So under tools here, you've got data transfer, data synchronization, and structure synchronization. So what we're going to do first is data transfer. And the nice thing about this is you can save some of your tests. So you can see some that I've done here. This was the first attempt when I did, which copied everything over, but then all the tables were messed up. So if I had taken Pete's empty script and then ran this copy, I'd have twice as many tables because they're almost all camel case, where you've got, like capital B, lowercase something, capital C, lowercase something. And Postgres Sequel sees those as separate from everything being lowercase. So if you do this one where it goes to a file, this is our MSSQL connection, our database, our schema, and I've got all the tables selected but one. And this is pretty common in MSSQL. It often creates a system diagram table, which it, I think, uses to store internal mappings and like field design, when query designs and schema designs and that kind of stuff. But it has no meaning outside of MSSQL, so you can bring it over, but it's not going to do you much good. So I've got that one unchecked. And then on this side, see, I'm going to a file instead of a connection, and I gave it a file name and I gave it the format. It doesn't seem to know 9.2 yet, but the formats haven't changed a lot in that respect. So I'm using the latest one they had. The trick is this advanced tab. You have to check some things or others depending on what's going on. Now I've got this one creating tables, which seems a little odd to me. don't think I want to create tables. I must have saved that
because you
wrong.
already did it, right?
Yeah, I already did that there.
I wonder. So you and it. Okay.
Yeah, let me leave that unchecked. And I've got it only inserting. I don't have it continue on error because I did want to see if there was an error. Though I think at some point I got so frustrated I checked it just to see how far it would get, because every time when it stops on error, then you got to go to the next one, blah blah. So if you let it continue on error, you can see all the errors at once, which is an advantage.
So it still goes through, so you know what to expect.
Exactly. But when you're happy with what you've got, then you kind of want it to not continue on error, so you can catch something you're not expecting. So I did uncheck that. I've got this creating something if it doesn't exist, just as a safety thing. But if you have it drop the targets, and when it drops it, you lose all your triggers and that stuff. So then you're back to the same problem or similar problem you had before. So let's try it with this and see what happens. So we run start. Yes. And it gives you a nice little message on what it's doing. And keep in mind, this is just going to a file now. We're not actually doing anything yet. Okay, that wasn't too bad. So if we now go to our file here, it just created this file right here. And you see a little Navicat and all that. So this is what I was talking about, this double quote business. Since it has double quotes around that, when you play that back in on the PostgreSQL side, it's going to create the table name with that camel case, which then if you try to do a select on it, you'll have problems if you don't use the exact case. So the first time I did this, I said, okay, well, I'm going to lowercase everything and remove all the double quotes. And then I found out, and actually I kind of halfway remember this from Clarion days, transferring stuff over. If you don't have the quotes around it, PostgreSQL will automatically make it lowercase, and I think Pete actually mentions that in one of his articles. So all you've really got to do here is remove the double quotes. But the problem with that is if you have data that has double quotes in it, because this has all the data in it too, remember. And that's kind of the whole point of this. We're trying to get the data over into the schema that we want. So in this case, the only table that has any data in it that has double quotes is the business rules. So, and I just know this from playing with it. If there's another table in there, then that would be a problem too. But so you kind of have to know your data and when you're doing this, or you just make sure that you don't mess with the data at all. You just do the schema part. Unfortunately, when it creates this, it puts it all together. So it would be kind of a pain to go through 30 tables and do custom, selects and replaces. So the easiest way to do this one is to do everybody but the business rules. So there's nothing even in that guy. So let's go down to business rules. And so what I'm going to do is replace all the double quotes and everything but business rules. So double quotes to nothing, selected text, and do start. Whoops, there's nobody in there anyway, because that first one didn't have anything. Now I'm going to skip the business rules and go to the very end and do the same thing there. Search and replace that with that. Selected text, make sure you do that one. Okay, so that did.
Wait, you wanted business rules in there?
Yeah, no, I don't want business rules yet. That's a special case because that table is the one that has data that has double quotes in it.
Yeah. Wait. So, I mean, if you look at line 68, 69, instead of quotes, double quotes, you put business rules?
68,
look
69.
at the very bottom. Is that?
Yeah, that's business. That's somebody else. That's business rules. Contacts business rules.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this see, it only has 3 records in it, so it's not a big table to worry with. But the GGIE program will crash when you try to save something because it actually, this is compiled code. And so when I first did it, I just deleted those rules, and then I went back to figure out what exactly was going on there, and that's what it was. So everybody follow me? We replaced all the double quotes. We removed all the double quotes from everything that's in here because SQL normally uses single quotes. So it's not a big deal unless you
I
happen to have.
enabled, yeah, I enabled Pete's mic in case you both want to chat. Okay,
Okay.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. So now I'm just going to do business rules, and really all I want to replace is this part here. Okay. So if we replace business rules quote with just that,
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
yeah, then it's not going to affect the double quotes that are in the data itself. Okay, 4 of those.
Gotcha.
So the end result of all that is all the double quotes have been replaced except for the ones that were in this table as part of the data. That's what we were after.
So if you have a big database, I mean, that would just kill Ultra Edit, wouldn't it? Or
No, I've never found a file that, I mean, it might take a minute or two,
yeah.
but I've had, million line files in this thing. As long as you got enough RAM and hard drive space, it'll do it.
Okay.
Or, I mean, worst case, you could run it through some other command line tool. On Unix we have sed and some of these things, and there's DOS equivalents of those, which can handle lots of stuff. But yeah, it would. And if you just did the structure and then the data separately, you could. I mean, you can play all kinds of games with it. But I have submitted 4 requests based on. Well, I had 3, and then Pete mentioned a 4th one. I've submitted those to Navicat, and I got a nice canned response that they're always, trying to improve their program, and they'll forward it to development and all that. So we might see it. I mean, they've released a point update since I bought this 3 weeks ago, so they do seem to actively develop it. Okay, so we've got that file saved, and I'm going to save it as slightly different name. That one with quotes removed. Okay. All right. So back to Navicat. Yeah, actually save him. Okay. So we've created the file that will create the actual data, and we have removed the quotes. So the next step is we want to, I've already done the database, and now we're going to run the query that we created. So the way you do that is you go into Postgres somewhere, and as long as you're in the table area, you can do a query and a new query, and then do a load, and then go find what you want to run. In this case, it's the this one here with the quotes removed that we just created. So open that up, and then we'll run him. And unfortunately, it doesn't really tell you when it's done. So it's 0 seconds. You wonder if it did anything, but you can scroll through here and see if it did anything, and it did. So we'll close that. And
yeah, I'd still be waiting.
yeah, kind of wondering if it did anything. Now it has a refresh, but I found that when you've done this, you never see anything. You've got to close the database and then reopen it. And now you can see, well, we already had tables in there, but if we look, say, at business rules, we've now got data in there. So we got stuff, which is great. So now, if you tried to, some of this other stuff is just to make it work with the GGIE. And this is good stuff because you could run this kind of thing in other types of databases. In the GGIE on the MSSQL side, they used a bit for the Boolean, 0 or 1, which doesn't translate because it sees it as an integer coming from MSSQL. And if you just try to run it in GGIE, it wants to see a bit. One example is, say, the contacts database. If you look at the design of it, it's bits here, which is what we want. So we're actually good. Let's see. That's because I'm kind of cheating, I guess. When I first did this, I was trying to go in the other direction, and that's where I was having to alter the stuff because it wouldn't fit in right. But you can run SQL to change, to alter a column from, say, let me just post that because it was kind of hard to find actually how to do that. Let me open up that file. If you Google for altering columns and stuff, there's generic ways to do it, but in PostgreSQL, basically, you do it. If it's 0, then you turn it into a 0 bit, and the 1 is the length of it. If it's 1, you turn it into a 1 bit, length 1, and otherwise I default it to a 0 bit, so I didn't allow any nulls in that. And I had to do that for those columns on the data, but it looks like I really don't have to do that now because of the direction I'm doing it. The other thing that's kind of cool is resetting the sequences, because the sequences in PostgreSQL, when you bring the data over, it defaults to 1. Well, if you've got 100 records in there and then you start inserting the next one at 1, then you've got a conflict if they were numbered, say, 1 to 100. So you can run a sequence reset, which Andy posted some code he uses, which is just a generic function. I was looking for something else, and I found a couple of pretty cool links that let you create the file that generates all the sequence reset code for you. Let me see if I can explain that a little better. If we open up, let's see, which guy is that? The generate sequence reset. And that's actually from, see if I can find the, I have a link to that somewhere. It was in the wiki. Let's see if I can paste that over here real quick. I found a couple things. One, it would do it, but you don't get a very warm fuzzy on it because you cannot figure out what it did until you look at the results. There's no output on that. But this one's a little better. Hopefully this will come over. Yeah, that link right there. It's in the wiki PostgreSQL.
Hey, can you put it in the chat?
Yeah,
people will be able to click on it if to.
I think this is chat right here.
Yeah, on the bottom right there. Just,
yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. And this code that just is lifted right out of there that we're looking at. So let's just run this in Navicat so you can see what I'm talking about. So I do a new query, and if I run that code, it creates, for every table sequence, it automatically resets it to the maximum value that's in there. Because if you just take this data that you've migrated and then try to run it in, say, the GGIE application, you'll get an error because it's not able to add anything, since the numbers will conflict. So, but before I found this, I just did this 30 times, which didn't take that long, but it's a lot cooler if you can copy it all at once. So you can see all that. So it generates all that for you at once, and then you just have to replay that code, which we'll do here.
Well, that's pretty damn slick, huh?
I thought so, yeah, because I've done this by hand for a long time, and I thought, well, you know, if Andy's got something, maybe somebody else has something, and so I pursued it. And
Google is your friend.
Google's your friend. If you can think of it, somebody probably has already beat you to it.
No kidding.
So if we run this now, it's reset all those sequences. So we're done. We've got the data over. And in theory, it should bring up the GGIE program, which it does, but probably better not show you that since that's still kind of for the class people. So that's the long story of getting it from MSSQL to PostgreSQL. It's much shorter to get it from MSSQL to MySQL because I didn't have the script anywhere on the MySQL side as far as triggers and views and functions, and I'm hoping maybe somebody from the class will do that.
But you don't have to worry about case sensitivity either, right? So
right. It's a lot easier to go from MSSQL to MySQL. And in fact, and looking at this, Oracle, well, of course, Oracle owns MySQL now. They've got a tool for free you can download from their website. See if I've got the link for that. I'll post here. But it doesn't do as good a job as Navicat. Let me see. Which I was a little disappointed in. I thought you would think, you know, since it's they're only worried about their database, that it would work pretty well. Post that here. And
the workbench, yeah.
Yeah, which I think I looked at a long time ago. It's at version 5.2, so it may be they just haven't done any work on it since they bought Oracle. I mean, since Oracle bought MySQL. But what I found in just trying to use that compared to Navicat and bringing GGIE over from MSSQL to MySQL was that I didn't understand the var max value, which I think is probably like 8192 or something on the MSSQL side. So what it did, trying to find that, it just left it empty. So your SQL wouldn't run on those tables that had varchar max in them. Whereas Navicat converts it from a varchar max to long text, which was pretty nice. So in the interest of completeness, well, I guess I've gone over time a little bit.
Not a problem.
Not a problem. Let me just do a real quick transfer from MSSQL to MySQL. So once again, I have cheated and already have that in here somewhere. Except I don't have the database. So you have to have the database first to get that going. So let's create
that's a good reminder, huh?
It is a good reminder. And I think I called it GGIE from MySQL. Okay. And now let's go back to that. See if he'll load. MySQL to MySQL. GGIE from MySQL. Am I not calling that right?
Oh, the source? Or?
Oh, I called it. Yeah, it's really not from MySQL. It's from MSSQL.
Right.
So that's kind of a misnomer. But since I've got that saved, and it doesn't let you rename stuff either.
Well, just delete it and do it again then, right?
Yeah, you can do that. You can rename databases in the pgadmin 3, and it looks like you could do it here because sometimes when you've got it closed in properties, it'll let you do that, but it still gives you a connection error sometimes. So these are the 5 databases Navicat Premium supports: SQL Server, SQLite, Oracle, PostgreSQL, MySQL. Kind of surprised it didn't have IBM's DB2 in there, but it doesn't. Okay, so let's do a new database, and I called it GGIE from MySQL, which is wrong. It should have been MSSQL, but if that'll load now. Okay, so once again, I've got all the tables except that sys table selected, sys diagrams, and I did leave that on there. I'll uncheck that. Same stuff we had before. I don't need that. Should be the same ones we had. And then just do a start. It's having a little trouble with that guy for some reason. Oh, probably, maybe I should have had it create since it was a blank. Oh yeah, that's a problem. Because with we were actually migrating into an empty database that had the schema. In this case, we don't. We do want to create
Just
tables.
had an empty. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really empty. Let's try that again. Yeah, that's a little better.
You find that it's pretty quick?
Yeah, it's very quick.
That's what I realized too.
The other thing I had a use for is that I have some. I have to work with a lot of different databases, and I've got one project that's been still in test mode for the last year, I think. And occasionally I have to synchronize these two databases, and so I thought, well, I'll just use Navicat to do that. It's all MSSQL, should be no problem. Well, I found that Navicat requires you to have a identity field, like an auto inc field on the MSSQL side to synchronize the data. So if you just have a GUI with a unique key on it, that's not sufficient. And that was one of the things I suggested that they relax that on. I mean, you can add your own identity field and have it just for that, but that seems a little wasteful. Because I had 2 or 3 tables that were using GUIDs, and I couldn't get those over directly without adding a identity field to it. So just a little gotcha there.
They made an assumption for you, didn't they?
They did, but especially
they didn't say there's a checkbox that says use this or that, or
that's they need a lot more checkboxes, because that's one thing. Could you leave the quotes off so we don't have to massage the table? Then we could go directly.
Oh, that would be cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So we'll see what they do. But so anyway, so that's if we close this now, and don't save that. And now if we open up that guy, then we've got tables, and we should have some data in here somewhere. Yeah, there's data. So, but once again, we don't have any views, no functions. You'd have to recreate those because and the syntax is different. But on a view, it's not so bad because a lot of times it's just the wrap around the create view itself, and you can extract the SQL, say from the MSSQL side, and without too much changing, if any at all, stick it on the view side on MySQL or PostgreSQL. So that part's not too bad, but the functions and it's just totally different languages usually. So that's where you've got to do a little work. But once you've got your schema set up on your different platforms, then it's not too bad to move your test data or whatever around. If you had a situation where you're having to support multiple backends with your program, this tool would be handy to keep your test or your initial data that you'd like to load for your customers in sync. So I think that's all I had.
Yeah, any questions or comments? Just type her in. Yeah, I don't think Pete can talk on the mic.
Okay.
I assume it will not talk to no.
Right. Yeah.
There's no.
You are correct, sir. Yeah, just those 5 databases. I didn't even see mention of with an ODBC kind of thing.
Yeah, it's specifically those 5.
Yes, those 5 right there. MySQL, PostgreSQL, Oracle, SQLite, and SQL Server.
Hey, imagine if they did ODBC. Wouldn't that be
Well, yeah,
awesome?
that'd open up all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And it does have some export and import functions, which I haven't played with, so you might could get around on something like that. But
He's asking, Pete's asking, does it integrate with any source safe type of thing for
not
procedure edits?
not that I've seen. Um, no. I was just tickled to death when I found the triggers, because it had regular triggers, but then it didn't have um, the database triggers. For example, you see tables, views, functions um, under this others. Then that's where you see the trigger functions.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's true.
that's kind of their kludgy way of, because every database is a little different. So that's kind of their catch-all, I think, to find stuff that's database specific. Like if we go say to MSSQL, then it's got different others, different names. So anything that's not across all the platforms, I guess, going to there. Plus, it has this modeling stuff, and which I haven't played with much, but
Is that to create your new databases?
yeah, and just kind of like the old oh, what was that called? In
UML
Clarion,
stuff?
what was that Clarion thing we had? The designer, the
Oh,
data modeler, that kind of stuff.
yeah.
I used something used to be called Happy Fish, and it's called something else now, but I've used that for years, which talks to ODBC databases and will reverse engineer stuff. But this thing should do that as well. So it's a nice combination of several tools that you can purchase. So I guess the bottom line is, if you've got multiple databases and you either need to move data around between them, or you want one common interface that you can use to talk to multiple ones, it's pretty handy. But I'm so used to the free ones that come with each database that I still kind of gravitate towards those.
Yeah, but you gotta keep maintaining and updating, and this way it's one
hmm
tool.
Yeah, it's one tool, and
And if you
it's
get to learn this one tool well, then that's
that's
cool.
right.
But
That's right.
but the thing is, like, you noticed that you went back to natively to the PG admin to go delete the thing instead of from here.
That's right. I know what works,
Yeah.
but obviously, but I deleted one in here, so I'm trying to
So you know
trying to
it
wing
works.
myself.
You know it
hmm
works. Yeah.
That's right.
Frank's asking, is there a sync function between the same, yeah, from MySQL to MySQL? Yeah.
Yes, yes, and that works a lot better. You can sync up structures, and that was the other thing I had use for in
Did you
my
use the backup yet? That's the other thing.
the backup.
Oh man,
Um,
it's fast.
oh, okay. Yeah, well, all my backups. Well, that's
Yeah,
well,
no, yeah, that's fine.
yeah. But yeah, it's a lot easier to transfer. It's just keep in mind it's looking for a unique auto increment type identifier to recognize what records are new, changed, or need to be deleted.
Yeah,
But
try
yeah, that.
try and go to a table with data in it.
Mm-hmm.
Just right click on it down below.
On where on the
Just
Postgres
pick
side?
anyone.
Okay,
Just
well,
right
oh,
click
this
on it.
guy's got something in him. Okay.
Oh no, not click, right click.
Oh, right click. Okay.
You see where you can dump, let's see, export, where is that? Anyway, there's a bunch of stuff. Maybe it's the whole database. Yeah, go back up to the connection. Sorry. Yeah, go right click on that level.
Mm-hmm.
Um, where
You can
is,
dump it as a
go,
SQL file.
go up
Oh,
one more.
you
One
want?
more up.
Okay.
Yeah, right click on
Well,
that.
that's the connection.
Yeah,
You
but
want to look
look,
for a backup? It might be under tools or something. Uh,
no, because I used to just right click.
where's
Obviously, I
view
haven't
back?
done
Oh,
it
there it
for
is.
a
Well,
long
there's
time.
this big backup button here.
Yeah, there you go. That's what I meant. Yeah,
So let's.
so yeah, back it up real quick. You
Okay.
back up.
Let's just Oh, well, let's do it all.
And then you
'Cause
can
we've got,
schedule it too.
well, that's all I have in that one. Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, look at that. Boom.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then you can schedule it. You see the next thing. So you can kind of
Oh,
do
under
those things.
advanced. Oh, this is part of
On the
this. Where do you see
toolbar. Yeah.
scheduling?
Main
Oh, I
toolbar.
see it. Oh, okay. Oh,
Anyway,
it creates a
you can
batch
play
job
with it.
in.
All I'm saying is there's more to it than meets the
Mm-hmm.
eye sometimes. They make it look really clean, but they do quite a few things.
And this reporting, I haven't even played with that. It comes with like a 2-user license of
Right.
reports. So that might be handy. So I thought, 25% or whatever it was off, I thought it was worth it. I think it's like $5.99 list for the
Well, you
business.
got 30% off.
Oh, was it 30? Okay. Well, yeah, even better. Evidently, under 500 is my magic number, but
Yeah.
but they run these specials periodically, so I just hang on. I'm sure they'll have another one soon.
Is there a simple restore the data you back up? I believe there was.
Yeah, you can back up and restore in this. Pretty much all your tools, free tools that come with stuff, do that. PGAdmin has the option of doing a regular, their native backup, which is like
Well,
a
click on the backup where you just did your thing.
Okay.
Okay, just go to backup, and then
There
there should be a
one.
restore. It's on the left. No.
Oh, let me restore.
Yeah, you see the first option. Yeah,
I'm gonna restore
you see
that
the restore. Guy. Yeah, so you can restore the backups. That should answer Frank's question.
Okay.
Woohoo. Don't do it.
So
Oh, you're doing it.
Says it was. Yeah, that part seems to work pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't care. But anyway, it's fast too, But obviously, it's a small database that you have. But I know for me it was pretty quick. One of the things too is when you view the data. I used to view data all the time, and so it would say, "Show me, the first 1,000 and the next 1,000." But you can say, "Show me everything," and man, it just worked hard. But it was pretty quick, and then you can sort all kinds of ways, and you can look at you can save how you look at things, like what columns to show. Like for instance, pick up one of the tables right now, and let's just view it. I'll show you real quick. I know this is out of the scheme. Okay. Yeah. Let's see. You can go to where's that? Can you go to File? No. You just right. No. Oh, here. Right click on the column. Let's see. So you can do all these different things, and one of it was you can filter, sort, and what was really good is it remembers what you sorted on, so you can go multiple levels of sorting. And then where is it that I wanted to do? You can freeze columns, but you can show second to the last, show and hide columns, for instance. You can go in here and uncheck which ones you don't want to see, like for instance, and it remembers that.
Oh yeah, that's pretty good.
And so I used to use that to look at stuff. I'd sort, I'd filter, and kind of like it's a bad boy's way of administer,
Yeah, because you just want to see maybe 3 columns that you're trying to troubleshoot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Of course, then if you forget that you've done that, then where's my data? I've heard that before.
So it'd be nice if you had triggers and stuff.
Yeah.
Because what was good is, like, if you added one, you could have added a record here, right?
Right.
And you were doing GUIDs, GUIDs, then you wanted to create it. So.
Yeah, I saw that where you could generate the GUIDs. That'd be pretty nice. I probably have to have a GUID field for it to go in, but.
That would be nice.
Yeah. Still.
So anyway, any questions? I mean, there's more to what, like I said, meets the eye, but it is simplistic, and once you get to use it, then you just say, wow. And if you can go across, do MySQL for your website stuff, and then do MSSQL, and then play around with Pete's Postgres stuff. I mean, you're just all over the board, but you're in one tool. That's what I kind of liked about it.
Yeah, and I often run into clients where they want to start with something free and then they want to move to, let's say, from MySQL to MSSQL or something. So, you're having to migrate the data. So it's kind of a pain to do it, one table at a time, especially with a lot of data. So, pretty handy.
Uh-oh.
Did we lose everybody?
Thanks, Frank. Uh-oh. Is it my fault? All right. So, there we go.
Yeah, so, we've got the 30-day trial up there, so feel free to play with it, and if you like it. But I get no commission, but that's just like the...
Neither do I. Dang. I'd have commissions forever. Okay. So, if there's no other questions, we'll just stop the recording.
Okay.
Unless you want to summarize again. I think you did a good job.
Oh, thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so big picture, this Navicat lets you move the data between the same databases family, like MSSQL to MSSQL, on different servers. It can move data between different database types. If you've got your structure set up identically on the target and the source, then it's a lot easier to do. But if you don't, if you're just going from scratch, you can at least get the data and the tables over and then worry about tweaking to get your views and functions and those kind of things. So, plus a lot of other stuff, as Arnold's pointed out.
Yeah, I just set up a connection, boom, you got your data right there in front of you. Scary good. Okay. All righty. Thanks, everybody, for coming, and see you on the other side.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Jack.
Sure.